Have you ever wondered what it would be like to use a mouse with a built-in wrist rest? You could of course use a mouse pad with a built-in wrist rest, or just use an external one like this, but then there's the issue of not being able to move your arm, which may not be a big deal for some tasks like sending email, watching videos, or just general use of your PC, but when it comes to gaming, that's a whole other story. This is the North Command Gaming Vandal, a mouse made by a Canadian company looking to solve this problem. And their solution is an interesting one. As you can see, there's not only a wrist rest attached to the mouse, but also PTFE mouse gates on the bottom to allow it to glide better on the mouse pad. But this does come at a cost, which I'll be talking about later on in the video. I've had this mouse for a few weeks now, and here's what I think. Starting off with the build quality, which for the most part is rather well done. When squeezing the mouse side to side, there's absolutely zero creaking. It feels extremely solid. However, because the mouse buttons aren't separated from the shell, you are able to quite easily activate the clicks when squeezing from top to bottom. But I never noticed this within normal use. Now, speaking of the buttons, even though they aren't separated from the shell, they feel very set in place and have no side-to-side play or wobble on them, which is my pet peeve, so they did a great job there. They do, however, have a bit of pre and post travel. It's not really enough to bother me personally, but I know some people care about that sort of thing. As far as the internals, the switches they're using are the Kailh GM 8.0s, so you can expect that very tactile feeling that comes with the Kailh switches. I'm not sure what encoder they're using for the scroll wheel. It doesn't feel like a TTC Gold, but I could be wrong. It just feels a bit lighter. But either way, it does provide a decent amount of tactility. I do have to say that I'm not personally a big fan of the side buttons though. While they feel alright, the positioning of them is a little off-putting. I think if the mouse didn't have a wrist rest, the positioning would have been fine, but with the wrist rest and the way that my hand sits on the mouse, it makes the positioning of them feel a bit too far back. The sensor they went with is the Pixart 3389, which is a fantastic sensor, so there's nothing to worry about there. Moving right along, the cable is very flexible, although I do wish it was angled upward. That simple difference does more than you would think to help prevent cable drag. It would have been a nice touch, but the cable is still fantastic nonetheless. Now, you will want to keep and read the manual that comes with it because this mouse is driverless, and everything is done through a single button on the bottom of the mouse. Everything from setting the DPI, the lift-off distance, and pulling rate is all done through using this button with various combinations. It's pretty straightforward, but it's an easy thing to miss. Earlier in the video, I said this mouse having a built-in wrist rest does come at a cost, and there's notably more than one. The biggest one, however, is one you may have already guessed. It does limit your range of motion, and it forces you to aim with mostly your arm. You can still do a decent amount of wrist aiming as well, but finger aiming is greatly reduced with a mouse like this. I found that my aim at times was actually still pretty good, but it definitely felt awkward to use. And I wasn't nearly as consistent as I usually am. I think another thing contributing to that is the fact that I have large hands, and with the way that the wrist rest is designed, it's currently not adjustable, which meant for me that my palm was resting on the wrist rest instead of my wrist. North Command Gaming did tell me they plan to fix this, and I hope they do, because that would honestly make this mouse more viable for so many more people. The mouse is already a bit too small for my 20cm by 10.5cm hands, and the wrist rest being this close to the mouse doesn't really do it any favors. But I'm glad someone is innovating and trying to come up with more ergonomic mice. One thing I will mention, however, is that something that's personally helped me a lot with wrist issues has actually been to just use a lighter mouse. I found for myself at least that alongside exercise and strength training has made the biggest difference. This mouse comes in at 97 grams, which personally I think is a bit much for something that has the goal of helping with wrist and hand issues. But despite that, I think North Command Gaming are onto something here, as long as they find a way to make the wrist rest adjustable. This mouse certainly won't be for everyone, but I'm always happy to see innovation like this, and I think for the right person, it could be a great fit. But every mouse needs a mouse pad to go with it. If you want to check out some of my mouse pad reviews, I'll have the playlist on screen now.